So again, here are my pajama pants. If you have an iron, you could iron the fronts and the backs of the center front seam. You don't have to iron all the way down to the bottom of the crotch. You basically just have to iron from the top of the waist, to about here, because the rest of that is just gonna go between your legs. So if you do choose to iron it, it's easiest to iron it. This is right sides out. So you lay that onto your towel or your ironing table, and you fold the top back, and then you can just press it on the inside. This is if you don't have an ironing board. So a little spritz, and I'm just going to iron this here. Again, I don't have to go all the way down. Just a couple of inches like this. And then I'm going to flip this. I'm going to do the same on the other side. And this is just optional. If anything, it might help you when you're stitching up your waistband casing, because you do want to make sure that this seam lies flat open when you're creating your casing. So here's your optional ironing step completed. And moving on to step 9, this is where you're going to be folding down the fabric at the waist to create a casing that you're going to thread your elastic through. So this is very similar to what you did on your miniature version, except instead of threading a piece of twill tape, you're going to be threading your elastic through here. So say press 2 inches down on upper edge to inside, forming a casing. But we are going to take a closer look at this with our pajama pants so that we can just make sure that the pockets are nailed down in addition to the casing being created. So now that I've pressed this, I'm going to turn it wrong side out again, because now we're going to put we're going to create the casing in which we're going to thread our elastic. So I'm going to lay this down on the table, and I think I'm going to start with the back. So that means the pockets are facing, that's the back. So the pockets are going to be touching down on the table. I think what happened is I lost one of my pins. So let me pin that back on right quick so I don't get confused. So the pockets are going to be on your table or on your floor, and you are looking at the back of the top of your pants. And so the instructions say to press down 2 inches on upper edge. We didn't make a seam gauge for 2 inches, so you're going to have to get your ruler or your tape measure and measure 2 inches. So if you're looking at step 9 on your pattern instructions, as you can see in the center back, you need to leave a little bit of an opening in which you're going to be threading the casing. It's similar to what you were doing with your miniature pajama pants. So I would say 1 inch from the left of your center back and 1 inch from the right of your center back is where you can start folding your casing down. So using 2 inches, you're going to make this fold, and it needs to measure 2 inches. So that is, it's a little short. So like this. And if you have your trusty 5 pins, that should probably be enough to help you out. So is this 2 inches? Yes, yes it is. So I'm going to pin this down, and I'm not going to pin through both the front and the back. I'm just going to pin through the back. And I'm going to do it a little bit above on the upper half of my 2 inches. I want to leave the bottom half kind of flapping around. So I'm going to do that 1.5 inches from the left side of the center back, and the same the right side of the center back. Like this. And then I'm going to fold this in half this way. So now I'm at the pocket. So I'm going to, at the pocket, I'm going to fold it down also 2 inches. Yes, 2 inches. And again, you have to make sure that you've lined this up with your side, with that seam that you've pressed open. That's not 2 inches. A little bit more. That's 2 inches, okay? I'm going to put a pin here. And then I'm going to flip it around to the front. Kind of pull that down a bit more. Yes, 2 inches. And then my 5th pin is going to go, I'm going to turn this one more time. So it's on the other side seam. I'm going to fold that down. Ah, a little short. That looks good. So I've pinned the whole waist down 2 inches from the top. So the second step of step 9, when you're pressing the fabric down to create a casing, is that you have to, now that you've pressed it down, folded it down 2 inches, you're going to have to take a 1/4 inch tuck at the raw edge in order to make that look clean. So that's why I didn't pin all the way at the bottom of my 2 inches. So I have this little flat part here. So I can tuck this up 1/4 inch. And again, you can use your seam gauge, which is at 3/8 inch. I guess we could have marked it at 1/4 inch, but you can also just kind of eyeball it. So you have your 1/4 inch here, and so you can take that pin and you can repin it so that you have included that 1/4 inch fold under. So I'm going to continue to repin the casing to include a 1/4 inch turn under. And I do want to make sure that my seams are pressed open when I turn that under. Like so. See, that's the center front to the side. And here's the back. I'm going to press that under again, 1/4 inch. And by press, I just mean finger press. We don't have to iron this. If you have an extra pin, you could stick another one in here, just as a reminder. And then I'm going to continue center back. Remember, it's about an inch away from the actual center back. I folded it under 1/4 inch. And then here's the side seam. Again, I'm going to just fold that. And I'm pinning all the way through to the front like this. You know, make sure you don't catch the back side of it. And maybe if I have another optional pin here, I'll stick one right here. And then here's my front to the side again. And this is why it's good to have the pockets pinned down, so you already have them placed flat. This looks good. And I have this pin where I've placed the pocket, but I think what I'll do is I will get another pin and pin it like so. So I have the whole casing pinned, and now I'm going to move on to the next step, which is going to be to stitch this casing into place. So the last part of step 9 is to stitch down your casing. So after you've pressed it 1/4 inch and repinned it so that you have a nice turn under, now you're going to be sewing this casing down. And remember, you're going to keep the back open, like a nice 2 inches. You're going to keep this open here. So you're going to start sewing here all the way around, and then you're going to end it here. That's because you need to have enough space for you to thread your elastic through. So once again, it's going to be double thread, big fat knot, and you're going to be stitching right along the edge of the fold, right on top of the fold. In the past, what you've done is a slip stitch, but this time you're just going to do a running stitch because that's the most secure and the quickest way to do a stitch. So here's my big knot, kind of ugly. So I'm going to start here, take that pin out. Maybe I'll do a little back stitch just to keep that secure. And then I'm going to sew right along the edge around the entire top of the pajama pants. So that's the start, and I'm going to go all the way around. So by the time you get to the side seam, be fearless. The casing might be a bit bunchy, so just kind of smush it down, do the best you can, and then you're just going to have to be careful here when you're sewing down the pocket that you're sewing it all the way through, ta-da, to the other side. So you're just going to have a big fat sewing line, and you're incorporating the pocket into that sewing line. So again, here's the front, and then in the back you just have a big line that you're stitching. If it's a little bit bubbly, don't worry too much because all of this is going to get gathered because it's going to be loose. You're going to have a big old elastic waistband up there. So the fabric's going to be bubbly anyway. Okay, so I've stitched all the way around. You see here how I've left the opening on the center back. So in this area is where we are going to thread our elastic piece.